行首次载人飞船飞行任务准备完毕，待命出征，请指示出发。是。5、4、3、2、1，点火。
A warm welcome to our special coverage on China's Shenzhou 11 manned mission here on CCTV News. I'm Wang Yizhi in Beijing. In less than 1 hour, President Xi Jinping will talk to the two astronauts, Jing Haipeng and Chen Dong, via satellite link from the command center of China's manned space program in Beijing. We will cover this historic conversation live. The Shenzhou 11 mission has been progressing smoothly as planned since the launch on October the 17th and docking with the Tiangong 2 Space Lab 2 days later. For analysis about China's manned space program, we're glad to have Mr. Xu Yansong. He is the Director for International Cooperation at the China National Space Administration. Welcome. Now let's talk to our reporter Han Peng, who's live at Beijing Aerospace Command and Control Center. So Han Peng, what are they expected to talk about? Are they just chit-chat or a command and control stage?
Well, Yizhi, actually this video call from the Earth to space by the Chinese president has already somehow become a tradition in China's manned space operation, except for the very first manned space mission in 2003. Former President Hu Jintao and current President Xi Jinping have both made their own video calls to the astronauts whenever the astronauts go into space. So this shows the concern and also the strong support from the highest leadership to China's space exploration. And what are they likely to talk about? Normally, the president and the astronaut would greet each other, and then the very first question the president would ask would be about the health condition of the astronauts. And then the astronaut would report to the president about the recent works they have done in space and also preview some of the future works that they will do. And in the end, the president will make a mini speech to encourage the astronauts in space and also to tell them, also to point out the significance of their manned space mission. And if you remember last time in 2013, President Xi Jinping made his first video talk to astronauts almost right after he took office. And during that video talk, he said that the space exploration, the dream of space exploration, is actually part of the China dream.
Well, what are they going to talk about is one issue, but how are they going to talk? A call between space and Earth, it's not like Skyping or a WeChat conversation. So what sort of technology will be used?
Well, actually, if you remember, back in 2013, Chinese female astronaut Wang Yaping has already given a live physics class right there up there in the sky. And during that time, she has held a 50-minute long lecture. And during the lecture, he has conducted a series of experiments to students here on the ground to show them how the things are working in the condition of zero gravity. So that experience has already shown how mature the technology China can provide to the video talks between the Earth and space. And to really conduct a successful video talk, you need to have at least two things. First is a strong and stable signal between the Earth and space, and second, which is more important, is actually a complicated and sophisticated coding system for the sound and video tracks. And according to the expert we just talked about, who are actually in charge of this time's video talk, they said that the the technology is so smart and so mature that China has. It has the images and also the soundtracks that we can receive here on the ground are actually even clearer than those of most of the MP4 players we can buy on the street. And besides talking publicly to the Chinese president, the two astronauts are also able to make private video calls to their family members. So just think about receiving a call from up there in the sky, deep in space, from your beloved ones. That's probably one of the most, romantic things we can imagine.
Yeah, for the families, it's one of the most memorable experiences on Earth, too. Thank you very much. That was our very own Han Peng there at Beijing Aerospace Command and Control Center. Astronauts Jing Haipeng and Chen Dong are currently on their one-month mission on board the Tiangong 2 Space Lab. Now let's have a quick look at their profiles. Commander Jing Haipeng is the commander of this mission. This is his third time to go to space after also joining the Shenzhou 7 mission in 2008 and Shenzhou 9 in 2012. Born in 1966, Jing became part of China's first group of astronauts in 1998. The other crew member is Chen Dong. The 38-year-old is an ex-fighter pilot. He joined the astronaut training program in 2010, and after 6 years of tough and systematic training, he's now finally on his first mission to space. And for more on China's space exploration, we're now joined by Mr. Xu Yanzong, the Director for International Cooperation at the China National Space Administration. Glad to have you with us on this special coverage here. So the astronaut will be spending 33 days in total in the outer space. So what does this mean for China's space program? Because this is unprecedented. What does it mean for China and for the astronauts?
Well, probably you have noticed that the success of Long March 5 has just conducted November 3rd of this year. And that also put us into a position where we have more ambitious program on space activities. And this astronaut extensive stay in outer space will provide a way and maybe demonstrate the possibility of staying outer space for a longer time and complete more complex missions once the space station is completed. So we're on the track of building a Chinese space station by the year 2020, where extensive stay in outer space will be a routine conduction for the space activities.
This is possibly why this mission is called a dry run for China's future space station establishment. Tell us a bit more about China's plan in the future.
Well, we have a number of plans in planetary explorations, and we also have planned to build a space station in the near Earth orbit. The exploration programs including lunar surface and Mars surface, those are probably robotic missions. But in the future, we don't want to exclude the possibility of having human missions on those planets. And these space station will be the foundation of future missions. If you have a longer stay in outer space, you would have the validation of your human body to fit the outer space environment. For example, microgravities, exposed to the radiation environment, and so on.
Of course, the astronauts are at the center stage of this space mission and today's conversation. These two astronauts are nearing the end of their month-long mission in space aboard the Tiangong 2 Space Lab. Now let's take a brief look back at how their lives were going on up there. Well, this is the third space mission for Commander Jing Haipeng, making him China's most experienced astronaut, as we've just seen in that video earlier. He also spent his 50th birthday in space. What a memorable experience there. Well, Jing comes with a handful of experiences as he flew both the Shenzhou 7 and the Shenzhou 9 previously. Now let's take a look at his journeys.
After the completion of Shenzhou 9 mission, we will prepare for the next. We will be ready for the selection of our motherland to make new contributions to China's manned space program.
This was from an interview with Jing Haipeng 4 years ago. Now he has realized his promise.
I didn't plan on being part of the Shenzhou 11 crew specifically. Being an astronaut is my post, and I always remind myself that I have to be prepared, even if I will not be selected for the mission.
Jing Haipeng was born in 1966. He joined the military service in 1985, and he became a part of China's first group of astronauts in 1998. After years of training, he was finally selected for the mission of Shenzhou 6 manned spaceflight in 2005.
I didn't fly into space that time, but that didn't bother me. Maybe I wasn't ready yet.
He sought guidance from his coaches and other astronauts and practiced and figured out the best ways of, for instance, improving his breathing. That's really helpful for endurance when operating spacecraft.
Then, Jing joined the Shenzhou 7 and 9 missions in 2008 and 2012. In Huang's eyes, Jing's past experience and his participation in the Shenzhou 11 mission is due to his hard work and dedication.
This is his third space mission, and this really proves that he has exceptional professionalism.
I think during our lifetime, we need to set for us one dream after another, and one goal after another, and to endeavor toward the set objective.
Now, Jing Haipeng is about to realize another dream, his third space flight. He's not just happy, he also has inner peace.
The Olympic Games is held every 4 years. I conducted my first space mission in 2008, and then again second in 2012. And now another 4 years has just passed. I think I need to learn from Chinese Olympic shooter Wang Yifu, who has participated in 9 Olympic Games. I still have a long way to go.
For the crew members, Chen Dong, this is his first journey into space. The ex-fighter pilot has made his way to the Tiangong 2 Space Lab through years of hard work. Now let's find out more about him.
6 years of tough, systematic training. 38-year-old Chen Dong has transformed himself from a fighter pilot to a qualified astronaut. 5 new male astronauts were in the running for the upcoming space missions, but Chen will be the first one in space. He will be accompanied by Jing Haipeng, who has been to space before, to complete missions between the Shenzhou 11 spacecraft and Tiangong 2 Space Lab.
My current focus is on how to complete the mission perfectly, so I'm feeling relatively calm. But I was very excited when it was announced that I was chosen. I felt so lucky to join the mission after 6 years of training.
Chen hails from central China's Hunan province. He used to pilot the Q-5 supersonic light fighter. In 2010, he joined the astronaut training program after passing tests with flying colors. This includes clinical medical knowledge as well as physical and psychological tests.
I didn't know much about aerospace, so we needed to spend extra time and energy to study basic theories. There was quite a tight schedule to learn a lot of theories, and we felt much pressure at that time. There was only 1 or 2 weeks to finish a course that usually takes several months. So we studied and discussed day and night.
Hard work pays off. Chen will join veteran astronaut Jing Haipeng to accomplish the longest space journey in Chinese history.
We're quite confident of our younger generation astronauts. Chen is outstanding in all fields, and he doesn't have obvious shortcomings. He's committed, smart, and strong-minded.
There was a lot of effort in training during the past 6 years, physically and mentally. I think we have met the requirements of a qualified astronaut to conduct manned aerospace missions.
Chen says teamwork is vital to help him achieve his goal. All the members on his team worked with each other closely and share a close bond. He says a strong astronaut recruitment and training system will ensure China's aerospace missions blast off toward greater heights. Paulo Montesillo, CCTV.
Now let's talk to our studio guest here, Mr. Xu Yansong. He is the Director for International Cooperation at the China National Space Administration. So we've seen in that video, Chen Dong is an ex-fighter pilot, and so does many of our astronauts who has a previous life of flying a fighter jet and then turn into an astronaut through years of rigorous training. So is that a case here in China? Will we be having more professional, for instance, physics background, biology background professionals who will be going out to the space?
Well, every country, at the beginning, they would use the fighter pilots to fly the spacecraft. One of the main reasons is the physical challenges that they face. So it's easier to train an astronaut from a fighter pilot than from a scientist. But however, with the easy access to outer space, more and more future missions will be planned for scientific missions. We will have a scientific objective to achieve, where the astronauts can come from the scientific community rather than from the pilot community.
China is the third country after U.S. and the former Soviet Union, now Russia, to put its own astronaut into space. And also the European Space Agency is a close friend to China's space programs administration. Many times we have invited them to observe and oversee, to observe many of our space missions, not only manned one, but also unmanned one. So any cooperation between us and the European Space Agency?
Very, very much. China and European Space Agency have very profound cooperation in the past 20 years or even beyond. The bilateral agreement was signed between the two agencies in 2008. And also we had a substantial cooperation, unmanned and manned. We had jointly launched the Double Star program with the European Space Agency for study of the atmosphere and stratosphere. And also we have for the manned mission, we have also bilateral agreement with the European Space Agency, both for telemetry tracking and control service, ground control crews, as well as the space segment. There are three parts in the China-ESA cooperation. We call it ESA, European Space Agency. The first part is the space hardware, the second part is the human part, the astronaut part, and the third part is the application, as you mentioned, the scientific part. So all of these parts are going simultaneously, and also we heard that European Space Agency is training currently an astronaut who can speak Chinese.
Even though with all these cooperation that you just said, many also criticize China's space program of lack of transparency, full of military purposes there. What would you say to defend?
Well, I would say that the space areas is always a dual use, and you can always play the story that these are for military purpose. But in fact, we have full transparency in our space programs and launchers and satellites. So
let's continue our special coverage here. Destination Space, about China's space exploration, the Shenzhou 11. Now, for more on this exploration, we're now joined in the studio by Mr. Xu Yansong. He is the Director for International Cooperation at China National Space Administration. Glad to have you with us again. So previously, we were talking about some of the cooperations between China and the European Space Agency, as well as some of the controversy surrounding China's space program. So many people say that the future of wars does not take place on Earth, but in space. Well, how did you understand this claim?
Well, I would say that probably World War I and World War II, you start with aircraft, and whoever dominates the airfield or airborne facilities would have the advantage of the higher point. That is the war in the past. In the future, we would have wars on informations, wars on communications, wars on navigations even. Those wars, those facilities are basically in outer space. We could see that we can use the telecommunication satellites, navigation satellites every day, and we can't switch them off for one day. Otherwise, we would have a blind eye and we can't hear anything, or even we don't know the way to our home probably. So we have to use space technology very extensively currently at this stage. So if you want to strike someone blind or can't hear anything, you have to use the space tools to blind them, or to, they can't have an eye in outer space, and they can't talk to each other, and then they would be paralyzed somehow. So that I would say the future war would happen in outer space.
Yeah, it is because we so is dependent on our communication, our cell phones, our satellite, and other communication mechanisms, that made us vulnerable. And there's a system called the quantum communication system on board this mission. Tell us a bit more about that and why China is keen to develop its unhackable communication system.
Well, quantum communication is still in a premature stage. We're encrypting some of the informations by quantum technologies. These satellites we launched earlier this year is to have a testing or demonstration on the capabilities of long-distance quantum communication. And probably that will bound for future fruitful results. But at this stage, we're testing and retesting some of the functions and capabilities of quantum communication.
Of course, the reason why we're doing space exploration is about here on Earth. The Tiangong 2 Space Lab has more than 50 pieces of scientific equipment on board, and one of these is what is called a companion satellite. Let's find out more about how this sophisticated communication device.
Weighing just 47 kilograms, the companion satellite is the size of a basic printer. It was launched from the Tiangong 2 Space Lab on October 23rd on an observation mission.
The satellite has two cameras. One is a visible light camera with 25 megapixels, similar to a common digital camera. The other one is an infrared camera that is temperature sensitive, which is helpful in noticing any abnormal temperature changes.
Scientists call the companion satellite a little nurse, as it's constantly sending images back to Earth for further study.
The picture was taken about 29 meters away. You can see the upper part is Tiangong 2 and the lower part is the Shenzhou 11 spacecraft. You can see the color of certain parts are relatively lighter, which means some equipment is working.
Nothing is simply in space, since both the satellite and the Tiangong Shenzhou complex are moving at extremely high speed. Efficient orbit control is required.
One of the key elements in taking a clear photograph is the lighting environment. This requires the satellite to control its movement accurately while in orbit to gain the best position relative to its own, the spacecraft, and the sun.
Aside from the companion satellites, it's also carrying out its own experiments. Yang Zhao, CCTV.
Well, our very own two astronauts, Jing Haipeng and Chen Dong, are conducting a series of scientific experiments during their month-long stay in space. But some of these experiments are very special. 3 of them have been designed by secondary school students in Hong Kong's Special Administrative Region. Our reporter Mao Dan visited one school to find out more about their design.
To make a porous membrane at a school lab, you will need to prepare a set of vessels and devices, follow a multiple-step procedure, and carefully mix the solution. A collaborative effort for a small team. But if you want to conduct the experiment in outer space at zero gravity, the major prerequisite is to minimize the complexity of the experiment and simplify the procedure. The students at Shanghai Fraternal Association Yongyao College, a secondary school in Hong Kong, explained how they designed the space experiment for the Tiangong 2 Space Lab.
We have simplified the experiment so it's quite easy to carry out in space. The solutions can be prepared on Earth and put in 2 plastic bags. The astronauts just need to make a salt water film with 1 metal ring and a PVA film with another ring, and then carefully pull the 2 together to try to create a porous polymer membrane.
How do they know of the water film?
We have watched them by Wang Yaping and thus know that in space a water film can be created with a metal ring because of increased water tension. So we hypothesized the same method in our experimental design.
China began to link its space exploration directly to basic scientific education 3 years ago, when astronauts gave a lesson to millions of school children from Tiangong-1 and demonstrated various phenomena in zero gravity. Today, as the country moves forward with Tiangong-2, students are encouraged to come up with their own ideas for experiments in space. A space science experiment design competition was held for Hong Kong secondary school students by the Mainland's Manned Space Agency together with the Productivity Council of Hong Kong last year. The top 3 winners, namely the experiment of a porous membrane, silkworm breeding, and the study of double pendulums, were carried to space by the Shenzhou 11 and are being conducted in the Tiangong-2 Space Lab. The students were then invited to witness the liftoff of the Shenzhou 11 at Jiuquan Launch Center.
I still remember the moment we heard the countdown and saw a light in the distance. It meant we could really see the rocket launch with our own eyes. Watching it slowly ascend and the dust flying in the wake of its launch was so exciting.
To see the spacecraft in person was so amazing. I had never imagined the rocket would be so gigantic. Being able to be part of such a giant and high-end project is the most precious experience for me.
Besides the excitement from the trip, the students are continuing with their passion for space science and they are paying close attention to the astronauts on board the Tiangong-2.
We don't know how the experiment will go in space. We're waiting to see the results when the astronauts return to Earth.
And this curiosity towards the unknown arises each time they look into the space. Mao Dan, CCTV, Hong Kong.
Well, they can only imagine how life is going to be in space, but can life in space be imitated right here on Earth? Our guide to the cosmos, Yang Zhao, brings us more.
Welcome to our home in space. I'm your guide to the cosmos, Yang Zhao. Today you will see how the astronauts spend 30 days in this confined environment. The space lab also serves as dining room, living room, and gym. Bedtime is in this sleeping bag, and since there is no gravity in space, in an upright position. Lighting in the sleeping area can be adjusted. Back to zero gravity thing. Using a cup to drink water is probably not a good idea. And this is why. For downtime, there is the Home Entertainment Center. Astronauts can watch TV when they get tired of looking out the window at that blue planet. They can also send text messages to friends and family. The weightlessness causes muscles and bones to atrophy. To help offset this, there is an exercise bike. Foot straps keep a rider firmly in place during workouts. Astronauts will also report their daily health data for both health monitoring and space medical experiments. Yes, experiments. That's why the astronauts are coming here. One of the projects is in this mini greenhouse where we would find rice seedlings. It's still in a testing stage, but in a not too distant future, steamed rice and stir-fried vegetables, we're Chinese after all, may be on the space menu. The seeds have been planted and the harvest is going to be out of the world.
Now let's go back to Mr. Xian Song here in the studio, the Director for International Cooperation at China National Space Administration. So our reporter Yang Zhao there mentioned a lot of experiments, some rice cultivation, plant cultivation project, and the Hong Kong SAR students also brought their own projects, their experiments onto space. So tell us what attracted your attention most about these experiments?
I would say the openness of these programs. We're opening the space activity to outer space, to the public communities, to universities and primary and secondary schools. Students came up with very innovative ideas, and we opened them for competition. The human spaceflight mission has many experiments that has been donated by the students or contributed by students. And we also opened our robotic missions to Moon and Mars. And the lunar mission also have many designs from students and university community. So these are the participation from the public, which also justified our space program in a way of opening to the public and for peaceful applications. And the stir-fried rice, I would say, won't happen in the near future, because that would need a very big vault to stir the rice and the vegetables. And the Chinese cooking is sometimes very smoky.
Yeah, you need a huge vacuum on board that to just suck out all those smoke. Well, you mentioned a lot of participation by the public, but China seems to lack some participation from the private sector entering this space program. Just a couple of days ago, China's first private developed satellite, it's a microsatellite by one of China's private companies, has been sent onto space successfully. So why the lack of participation from the private sector? Is it because of profit or stability or safety?
I would say all of them. The space endeavor is very risky business, and it also brings very limited benefits back to Earth. Taking remote sensing, for example, the remote sensing industry has been there for many years. The government support many remote sensing application satellites. The program, the Chinese has also many remote sensing programs that are also funded by the government. We also see private sectors like Planet Lab from the United States. They launched more than 200 satellites into outer space to achieve a revisit time very short, even within 1 day, one spot they can revisit. So these are what we call a time resolution, and you can have a very short revisit time, and also a spatial resolution is very important to achieve commercialization of remote sensing satellites. Just for one example, telecommunication satellites, very huge, and you have to send it to geostationary orbit, which is 336,000 kilometers away from Earth. So it's a very high orbit, and also takes a lot of energy of the rocket. So commercialization of outer space is difficult, but it's on the way, on the track. We are very pleased to see some of the private sectors are entering this field.
Of course, we're keen to see more players in this market. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping and other senior officials have arrived at the control room at the Beijing Aerospace Command and Control Center. In a while, President Xi will speak with Shenzhou 11 crew, Commander Jing Haipeng, and Chen Dong via satellite link. Now, everything is ready. We will witness this historical conversation between ground and space. Like we mentioned earlier, on October the 17th, China launched its Shenzhou 11 manned spacecraft. On board 2 astronauts. We'll be spending a total of 33 days on that Shenzhou 2 Space Lab. It will be the longest mission in the country's manned space program to date. Now, just a couple of days ago, we successfully launched China's biggest ever carrier rocket, the Long March 5, the Changzheng 5. What does it mean for China's future space exploration? Because it is capable of carrying a bigger space lab into space, which some would interpret it as to China's ambitious space station establishment. So what would Changzheng 5, the Long March 5, do?
Well, the Long March 5 is a very crucial stage at this moment. It does two things. One is the transformation from a conventional launch vehicle, which is 3.35 meter diameter, which has been limited by the railway system, to the inner land 3 launching site, has been extended to 5 meter diameter or even bigger, because this launch vehicle is going to be manufactured in Tianjin and shipped to Hainan by boat. So these are opening a newer, unlimited capabilities of bigger launch vehicles. And the second thing is that the launch vehicle will be used for launching space exploration missions and the construction of space station, as well as bigger payloads. As the low Earth orbit payload is capable of 25 metric tons, so we can put a huge payload into near Earth orbit. And in the coming year, which is 2017, we will have 2 more missions, one for experimental and for further demonstration and validation of the launch vehicle. And the second mission will be the sample return mission from the moon. We'll take a piece of the moon and return it back to Earth.
That's probably too early to say that Changzheng 5, the Long March 5, is in part of China's ambition to explore the space, the lunar system, as well as Mars. So how far are we from that mission?
The Mars mission has been approved by the State Council already earlier this year, so we're in the implementation stage. But Mars is more complicated. The atmosphere of Mars is 1% of Earth, so you need probably bigger parachutes. None of the first missions to Mars has been successful in the international community. So we're trying to launch the Mars mission by 2020, and it takes about 11 months to get to the surface of Mars. And we're going to use an orbiter, a lander, as a rover at the same time, rather than taking a few steps. So this is a one-step, one package for all. So we're going to achieve landing and roving at the same time. We'll also have an orbiter to communicate with the Earth.
The Silicon Valley icon Elon Musk, which many refer to him as the Iron Man, has a plan to bring to space as a colony to colonize Mars by the year 2022. Is that realistic?
It's, I would say it's a future scenario. I would say that because the Mars surface is very hazardous to human living. Once the first thing you would go to Mars, if you have a huge colony, you have to dig a hole. And to get away not only from the climate, from the elements, but also from the space radiation. And to convert the Mars surface to a habitable surface, you would need years of effort. The international community currently is working on a roadmap to space exploration. That roadmap would take 3 steps. The first step is to abandon this International Space Station by the year 2024, or probably further extend to 2028. And then the second step is to establish a sized lunar orbit exploration programs. We'll be orbiting the lunar area and probably landing robotic missions and human mission to lunar surface, and have human-assisted sample return missions to further study how to work with the uncooperative body in outer space, and then to capture an asteroid from outer space and bring it to lunar surface, lunar orbit. And the third step is to achieve human space flight to Mars by 2030s. So we would take about 20 years to better understand the technologies, the space environment, because once you're outside the Earth protection, you would be very vulnerable to radiations, plasmas, and outer space environment, and you would never know what would happen to human body. So that has to be carefully studied, as this is about a real human life.
Unimaginable risk out there. But what's near is the retirement age for the International Space Station. You've mentioned the year 2024 and might be extended to the year 2028. But by the year 2022, China would have its part of its own space station. What kind of opportunity will it bring to China, as well as to international cooperation between China and other countries?
I would say that the Chinese space station is very promising in the very close future.
Now we're looking at Beijing Aerospace Command and Control Center. President Xi Jinping and other senior officials have already arrived at the room, and they will conduct a ground-to-space conversation. Just now we've heard both astronauts saying that they have received signals from Beijing. Looking at the big screen is Chinese President Xi Jinping. He will be looking at the 2 astronauts conducting a scientific experiment. I believe that's what we're seeing right now. Well, this experiment is called the Man-Machine Coordinated On-Orbit Maintenance Operation. The Tiangong 2 Space Lab is equipped with a 1.35-meter robot arm that we're seeing right here on the screen. It will be operating on the Tiangong 2 Space Lab. Now, the system includes 6 humanoid robot arms and 15 robot arms, and 15 robot hands, rather. The 2 astronauts will control the system via active software and a data glove. We can see how They're doing it right now. Some test, dismantling heat protection material, and unplugging, and later a lot of maneuvers on board. So, Mr. Xu, tell us a bit more about this robotic arm. Of course, 2 astronauts is not enough to conduct all kinds of daily maintenance in Tiangong 2 Space Lab. So what will the robotic arm do?
Well, the International Space Station also introduce a interior robotic arm. We call it interior robotic arm because there are also exterior robotic arms. The exterior robotic arm is used to construct the space station, moving major parts to and from the existing fixtures. The interior robotic arm, as we see, also with 15 tools, you have mentioned 15 hands. They're there for a different purpose, because once the human body is in outer space in the microgravity environment, their controlling precision, because of the affection of gravity, is less, but in comparison with the robotic arms. So they can't probably even needle a thread in outer space, where the robotic arm can do a very precise work. So this is the purpose of experimenting this robotic arms in the interior of the space station. Probably in the future, some of the missions will be done and can be conducted by the robotic arm with the absence of human being in the space station. Probably like turning the bottles and turning the cube, experimental cubes, and so on.
我是921，请做好与习总书记通话准备。
Now, the commander at the Beijing Aerospace Command and Control Center is giving the order to ask the astronaut to get ready for the conversation between them and President Xi Jinping. So with that order, I believe the robotic arm operation, the maintenance operation test is done. Next, I'm wondering what they are going to say to President Xi Jinping. It's been
神舟11号，现在，请中共中央总书记、国家主席、中央军委主席习近平同志与你们通话。海鹏同志。神舟11号，明白。敬礼。立定。海鹏同志。
Comrade Haipeng.
陈东同志。
Comrade Cheng Dong.
你们辛苦了。
You've worked really hard.
我代表党中央
On behalf of the CPC Central Committee, the State Council,
中央军委
and the Central Military Commission, on behalf of all ethnic groups of the Chinese nation, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude. Regards to you.
Thank you, General Secretary. We want to thank the whole nation for your support.
你们已经在
You have lived in the space for over half a month. Comrade Haipeng, for you it's the 3rd time doing manned mission. Comrade Chen Dong, this is your first time entering the space. The Chinese nation, they all very care about you. How are your physical conditions? How's your life? Is your work proceeding smoothly?
Thank you, General Secretary. We are feeling great. And all work are proceeding smoothly. We can even watch CCTV news broadcast here in space with very high quality reception. We felt encouraged and excited when seeing President Xi Jinping's presence in the 6th plenary session of the 18th meeting. China's manned space program has entered into a new height, and the Chinese astronauts are now enjoying a much more optimized condition here in space, where truly proud and honored to be part of our great nation. Report to General Secretary. We are already adapted to the weightless environment, and our diet and working conditions are normal, and all work are proceeding according to plan. We will carry on our work and finish the mission afterwards.
Very good.
看到你们的状态很好，我们都非常的高兴。
We're all very happy seeing that your conditions are very good.
团结协作，
You've worked hand in
迎
hand
难课间，
and overcome a lot of
实
difficulties.
现了一流的过
You
硬
have
的素
shown
质。
exceptional skills and
希望你
abilities.
们
I hope
再
that
接再厉，
you keep working hard
密切配合，
and work closely
精心操作，
and operate
圆满地完
carefully
成后续任务。
and successfully complete the following
祖国和人
procedures
民
and missions.
盼望你们胜利
The
归来。
Chinese nation and its people hope that you return
我们一
triumphantly.
定牢记总书记指示。
We will follow your instructions closely and fulfill our missions. Please put your trust and the whole nation's trust in us. Salute.
神舟11号，我是921，习总书记与你们通话完毕，请按计划开展后续工作。
General Secretary Xi has already completed the call with you. Now you can start your missions afterwards.
Yes, Commander.
Well, that was a conversation between Chinese President Xi Jinping and the 2 astronauts on board the Tiangong 2 Space Lab, which is on their 30-day mission in space to conduct a series of experiments on that space mission. So let's turn to our studio guest here, Mr. Xu. What part of that conversation stood out for you?
I would say the greetings from the leadership is really encouraging for the astronauts, especially the personal concern of the health and conditions in outer space. And one thing strikes me most is the astronaut who mentioned that the living conditions has radically improved. So this is the effort not only of the manned spaceflight office, but also the whole industry. They bring the bigger environment, bigger designs, better designs. Instead of green, they turn the interior white compared with the Tiangong 1. And they improve the catering and the beverage of the astronauts. So probably they enjoy better lives in outer space. And because they stay extensive long period of time, and these are very important, especially food is very important. If they eat the same thing every day, they would feel very depressed. Same as Earth.
Yeah, we also saw from that video there, President Xi Jinping shaking hands with some of the scientists and staff there at Beijing Command and Control Center. For them, the space mission is something really far but quite near for them because they have been working anonymously, quietly, behind the scene, on backstage without making a name in this mission. So what would it mean for them to shake hands with President Xi Jinping? An encouragement, a recognition?
I would say a sense of achievement. The result has been very satisfactory, and this is not only done by one person. It's a whole space community is working 24/7, monitoring the outer space environment, the orbit, the health condition of the astronauts, even to avoid space debris of outer space for the spacecraft. So every system of the space industry is working as an integrated body to ensure the success of this mission. And we have 15 more days to welcome the astronauts back to Earth. In the middle of that process of 30 days, President Xi Jinping's visit is very, very encouraging to the space community.
Of course. And like we said earlier in this program, this is a tradition actually for many of China's presidents. Previously, our own presidents also conducted these conversations with the astronauts orbiting in space. So tell us a bit more about China's ambition. What kind of role does the space program mean for China?
And space activities has been very intensive in China. China is ranking among the top few space powers in the world. We have achieved the Long March 5 success. That launch vehicle alone is the #1 currently capability in terms of payload and capabilities and efficiency in the world, currently serving launch vehicles. We've seen probably previously larger vehicles, but those are also retired. But this currently in-service launch vehicle, this is the most efficient and most friendly environment launch vehicle. And the launch vehicle is very important because you have to have access to space before you start any activity. So our access to space has been paved way by the new series of launch vehicles starting from Long March 5 all the way to Long March 11, compared with Long March 2 to Long March 4, which are using conventional fuels. These are using new fuel system, liquid kerosene, liquid oxygen as fuel. So these are more efficient engines. On November 3rd, we have seen the successful launch of Long March 5, which also put China into the most a very good path to from a space nation to a space power.
A space power, that is quite expensive as well. I want to bring into context here. In the 1960s, the U.S. lunar mission took about 4% of its whole GDP, and now its NASA program consists of only half of 1% in its GDP. So a quite dramatic downturn here. But for China, the space exploration is quite expensive as well. So how do you balance the cost and the profit?
Well, the Chinese space program is even less than the U.S. GDP comparison. Very modest space programs currently ongoing with the Chinese activities. We have limited robotic missions to lunar and Mars. The human spaceflight missions are very limited also. We're not making a final decision on the future of human spaceflight to moon surface. So it's a very conservative program rather than compare with the US, especially in the 60s. In the 60s, NASA has no budget, which means they can spend whatever they want. So they achieve very quickly because they pull the whole nation's industry together. The space activity is really a reflection of the national capability in the industry, in the materials, in the manufacturing process, and the engineering and electronic standards the nation has. So it's not only a single, let's say, single programs. It's a reflection of the total national power.
Thank you very much for your analysis. That was Mr. Xu Yansong, the Director for International Cooperation at the China National Space Administration. Appreciated for joining this special coverage here. And that'll do it for our very own Destination Space, a live coverage of the conversation between ground and space. I'm Wang Yizhi here in Beijing. And to discuss about the global stock market turmoil following the U.S. election, we will hand over to our very own Biz section. The global business is coming up next. Stay tuned.